Sac? Because I imagine it's pretty hard because it's not easy kicking back on a beach situation that you're doing.
So it's been a dream to do that. And first of all, thanks for having me on. It's great to have all of you here. Have read multiple of you. One of the very first blogs I read was Get Rich Slowly, and it's here in the flesh. So back in college, and a lot of the things I got started in real estate in college with Eric, the original founder of Opendoor. We used scholarship money to buy rental homes and put in sweat equity. The timing was good. We bought our first place in '03, and the mortgage was only $580 a month, and it rented for $1,400. There was a clear opportunity in student housing, which became a big trend. But that's how I got started in real estate, and it was initially something that I did on the side, and then joined Opendoor as part of the founding team when Eric was starting that. And that was something that was much larger. But the other stool of my passion is cities and transportation. And after college, I spent a decade doing transportation with trains and cars and buses, trains, buses, bikes, New York.
Oh, so you worked in New York on transit then?
Right.
Okay, I didn't actually even know that.
Trying to make this better. And always saw ways to make cities better by looking at places like and seeing all the challenges. And I grew up here in Phoenix, which was this sprawling, car-dependent place, and thought we could build something different. It was the right time. My career was far enough at Opendoor to take a bigger swing than when it was a pipe dream back in college. But also it was the right time because of transportation technologies, where ride sharing with Lyft and Uber, with the rise of AVs coming in at some point in the future, with electric bikes, car rentals, etc. All the pieces were in place to build walkable neighborhoods again.
Okay, yeah, that's neat. So for most of the audience has not been to Cul de Sac, but one of the things I noticed here when I got here is, aside from the normal stuff you see on social media, which is like nice plazas and gathering spaces, is they have like a little mobility thing at the end where there's like a small visitor parking lot, but then there's all these dedicated spaces for like Waymo vehicles and the electric scooters, and there's a whole row of electric car chargers for the future, and then they have some electric cars that you can just like walk up and check out for just to do.
It's going to be wonderful.
Car when I move here, the answer is no. It just makes it easier to use your car less, and then you use it less and less, and then you'll have a much easier option of selling it if you realize like, hey man, I don't want to pay for $2,000 in insurance anymore, so I'm just going to get rid of this. So that's kind of like a stepping stone in that way.
The average, go ahead.
So, are there any other tips to help people wean off cars and just having the option to drive a really long way from one thing at the grocery store?
The two biggest things are become good at trying to use all the different options, and then the other one I say is do math, which is that the average household spends $18K on a car. Average monthly cost of the car is $800 now. These things are going up. The average new car price is $48,000 now. And the first use that people think of for something like Lyft is, oh, it's like when I'm going to go drink at a restaurant, or when I'm going to go at the airport, somewhere where we would have expensive parking. But that only gets rid of the marginal costs, the gas or electric charging. You really need to go cold turkey and go to zero car to get rid of the fixed costs, the insurance, etc. And so that's the one that people need to get really comfortable with. And understanding that it's freedom. It's you have more choices and better ways to get around, and you can mix and match different things. And you also have room for spontaneity, right? If you live somewhere and then your friends all of a sudden are doing something fun and want to get drinks somewhere, right? If you're driving a car, now you're like have to go drop it off or something. But if you just lifted it in the first place, you just go. So. It's not just how you get around, it's also how things get to you. So our residents are power users of logistics services like Instacart, etc.
Yeah, and Ryan actually owns no car. I've just learned that you just use Lyft as if it's your car, for those times you need it. And whereas for me, I'm not trained that. My default is like, if I can't bike there, I'm going to use my car. But if I got rid of my car, then I would just default to Lyft or whatever. And the Waymo is actually more fun. And yeah, it's amazing because if you're spending $800 in your car, that pays for a lot
of rides.
Lyft rides every month, and chances are you're not going to need it every single day, so you'd save money by paying someone to drive you around.
Some of it's social norm. This is the kind of thing that I got from blogs like y'all's. Is like just if you're going to a dinner party, how many dinner parties do people really go to? If you go to one dinner party a month and you take a $30 Lyft, people will be like, well, what are you doing? That's so expensive. But you're like, hey, it's just math, and you can ruin the budget for multiple those.
Yeah, you're paying $30 a day to own a car, sometimes if you're a family, especially with 2 cars, so.
$30 a day is the average.
Yeah,
Yeah. With one car.
yeah. So I remember,
Can I jump in?
oh yeah,
So you talked about tailwinds.
Yeah.
I noticed, obviously, this is my first time in Phoenix. Really cool metro area. We love the light rail, windmills here. It seems like there are tailwinds here in particular.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you think Phoenix and the Phoenix metro area is unique, or do you think this is replicable in other cities based on infrastructure? Like, I'd love to hear just general thoughts.
Yeah, the demand for walkable neighborhood is all over the U.S. The National Association of Realtors, they just updated their transportation preferences survey, and every generation would pay more to live in a walkable neighborhood, including boomers, and it's 92% of Gen Z. So the demand is everywhere, and there's places like New York where it's walkable. There's even walkable places, often the places in cities that we built before cars. Even there's a walkable neighborhood, a walkable housing downtown Phoenix trip from a long time ago in the heart of sprawl. A key reason why it's here is that it's illegal. This housing is illegal in most of the country, and things are changing. We have this misconception that people want to have a car. It's actually because we built things for cars, and they don't have a better choice, because for most new developments, it's actually required to put parking for retail, for housing, etc. And also in many places, it's very hard to build. Right? If we were trying to build in New York or San Francisco, it still wouldn't even be close to open. But here, with the growth that's here, and we found a great partner in the city of Tempe. We found a phenomenal piece of land here, right on the light rail, and it's something that there's so many people who think that would like to live in a place like this, and so we take advantage of that demand. But we plan to expand everywhere, and it's not just about us expanding. It's about unlocking the roadmap for other developers in other cities. We get so many visitors and people, and we want them to see this as a role model.
yeah.
And a quick interruption, and we'll kick it to Paula. So wave your arms.
Okay.
But no action.
That's
Thank
close.
you. Yeah. Okay. Paul.
As a quick follow-up to that, the fact that parking is not legally mandated for residential here in Tempe, is that a recent legal change? Was it an oversight from when they initially put it? Like, why are the laws different here than they are in the majority of the nation?
So actually, we were a special case. So the city actually passed a piece of legislation to allow us to. It was the first agreement between a city and a developer to build a development without residential parking, and so it's actually most developments here are still required to do that. Hopefully, these things will change, and sometimes change comes slow, but we're seeing lots of places across the country. There's now, I think, it was reported that there's now over 50 cities in the country that have banned, that don't have any parking minimums. So we think that this is going to change, and it's not a huge reason why. When you put lots of parking, that adds traffic, and that also has led to us building housing that divides us, and people aren't connected. We don't know our neighbors in the U.S. anymore. We've built gated communities. Most apartment complexes are just gated, and so if you're a neighbor and somebody wants to build a gated community, it's going to add traffic, and you're not even allowed in there. That's not super appealing. But what this is, it adds lots of amenities to the area. There's a great restaurant. There's a great plaza. We throw great events on every Thursday, and that's something that people want in their neighborhood. So we have people from all over the country asking us to build there.
So I've got a question. My background is a real estate investor and I rental properties. I also spend a lot of my time as a hobby trying to make my town more walkable, but I'm in a southern college town that is retrofitted for automobiles, and so it's an uphill battle. And so my question is, and when you start a business to develop properties, it's you have to make a profit, you got to make money, and we've talked about this a lot of demand for walkable communities, but I'm wondering what are the headwinds for someone who wanted to replicate this, or for you to replicate this again, that make it difficult economically to make something like this work? This if it were easy to do and it were very profitable, everybody would be doing it. So why is this so difficult to do something which a lot of the people watching this will think is amazing?
Yeah, it's a little bit of it depends where something's built. There's a little bit of the chicken and egg problem. which is that if you're building at the edge of the city, it's hard to just have a cold start walkable neighborhood. I think eventually that will change as these tailwinds continue, and with building something larger as well can help that. But mostly it's about taking the areas that can already support this and putting the policies in place and then just making it happen. One thing that's interesting is that it's a uniquely American thing that we're so nostalgic for college. And a big reason is that it's the only time in most of our lives that we live in a walkable neighborhood. And our college campuses are some of the best walkable neighborhoods in the US. ASU is a square mile, it's a fantastic walkable neighborhood. And I haven't been to Clemson, but
Walkable on campus, all campus.
exactly. And so the places, and then the places directly adjacent to it, I would be surprised if there wasn't demand for substantial walkable neighborhoods, especially if they're built in a concentrated way. And so it's not something where you can just build it in, rural Idaho or something. It needs to be in the right places.
And it's almost a different calculus. I know my own town, I've been trying to advocate for this. There's just, when you think that this is the way it has to happen, you gotta have a certain number of parking spots, because somebody needs to go to the grocery store. It's almost like a law of nature that this is the way it happens. And to put a different laws there and say, well, actually, if you remove this assumption that people can walk to the grocery store, they can walk, you took 10 trips a day and 6 of them were walking, all of a sudden you need the transportation infrastructure less. And so there's just so many different, it's just a really hard sell, I guess is what the point I'm making, is you really have to convince people of a lot of different things. So I'm impressed by that, but also I'm curious how receptive people were in this area, citizens, just people, when you talk to your city council members, they're listening to the citizens yelling and saying those kind of things. So were people open arms saying, hey, let's do this, let's remove the parking mandates, or was it something you had to convince people of?
So we spent a lot of time working with all of the different stakeholders, and interestingly enough, some of the ones that you might not think of, working with the fire department was an example. One was really important. So we have this paseo that's like this, it's the iconic, it's the thing that normally would be a road for cars, and instead it's this beautiful walkway, and it can be used by the fire department and police and emergencies, we listened to stakeholders before we came forth with a full plan to really understand what mattered, so that by the time we brought something, it was something that people were excited about. And because it was the first, real estate's so stodgy. Everyone from investors to cities are asking, where has it been done before? But now this is now the reference project. People can point to this and say, actually, the neighbors love it.
One final follow-up question to that. When you're the first, there's always inspiration somewhere else. I've lived in Europe and really enjoy Europe. We talked about that a little bit ahead of time. Like, were there any particular experiences you've had in other places? Maybe it's pieces that you put together here that motivated you to do some specific development pieces that you have here. I'm curious if there's any cities or towns.
Oh yeah. I've been to over 60 countries and lived in a handful. And I grew up in Phoenix and had an SUV in college and high school. And the same scholarship that I used to get into real estate also had money to go abroad. And I hadn't been anywhere besides the beach of Mexico before graduating high school. And after freshman year, went to Budapest was the first place, but then later it was places like Tokyo and Amsterdam. And I said, oh wow, the sprawl of Phoenix is not the best way to make a city. Budapest it's got great transportation systems, it's got lots of density, vibrant street life. Clearly it makes people happier, healthier, wealthier. And that launched the passion for cities. And it's not modeled after this isn't modeled after any one place. It's got bits and pieces from all over based upon what makes sense in this local context.
Cool. In fact, it's kind of funny, it's ironic to do a development like this in Phoenix, because for anybody in the audience who hasn't been to Phoenix, it's like the most ridiculous car paradise ever. Everything is super, super sized, and the parking lots, they're all gorgeous and way, way too big. Like today's one of the busiest weekends of the whole year for Phoenix, and the parking lots are still only half full. And then at the edge of every parking lot, there's like 4-story parking garages just in case, and they're almost always empty, and they're always like beautiful architecture, and there's so much concrete, so much metal, so many gardens, just for just in case everybody else in the whole United States also comes here with their cars, and make sure that nobody will ever have to search for a parking space. If that ever happens, it would be a disaster. And all the roads are 6 to 10 lanes wide, they're not the freeway, and then the freeways are also 6 to 8 lanes in each direction. And they're always packed. That's like the only place that people really, max out the pavement. There's so much pavement here. So anyway, that's my impression as a person who lives in American cities like Denver, which I thought was pretty car-based. but like
Phoenix
nothing.
is it's the place.
Yeah, nothing compares to the Phoenix metro area in terms of how ridiculously car oriented it is. So it's quite hilarious that Culdesac is doing this here, and it's like, you know, extra cool in that for that reason.
One of my favorite, I forget who has this sticker, but it says geometry hates cars.
Yeah, right. Because like just a one bedroom apartment is about enough room for one car to live in if you're in a garage.
Yeah.
Is there any history of like why Phoenix has like such a big car culture? Do you know?
A little bit. It's a new city, and it grew quickly, like in the era of highways, right? Where and we've been building the wrong kind of housing in the U.S. for 100 years. That's about when we stopped building streetcar-oriented neighborhoods. The car companies bought the streetcars, ripped them out. Even Phoenix, which today only has a 30-mile light rail, used to have a 33-mile streetcar system. But then we started building sprawl. We started building roads, and especially as Phoenix just grew outward, and there was this massive freeway expansion in the 90s. Just kept going, and then you get fully into the chicken and egg problem, where if you're building on the edges, and this was before Lyft and car rental, hourly car rental and things like that, where that was just what people built, and that's why this is so noteworthy here. That it's right on the light rail. It's a couple miles from downtown Tempe and ASU, and it's now catalyzing a neighborhood around us. We also have great things on site. We work with the city. There's a protected bike lane going up to this outdoor mall that has 12 restaurants and is attached to the best bike route in Arizona. Bike infrastructure is so key, but that's why it's here.
Okay. And I lost my train of thought.
It's all good.
I just want to jump in and say that the analogy that you made with how so many people are nostalgic for their college days,
Yeah.
that really resonated. I live in Manhattan, New York, and one of the things I love about it is that it is not car dependent, it's a walkable city. And specifically inside of my building, I'm friends with many of the people who live in other units in my building.
Yeah.
And we've often talked about, we're like, wow, this is like college with money.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
This
That's
is
good.
incredible.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
So, how has it been, how large is this organization, the Cul de Sac?
The company.
Yeah, the company.
So our company has about 30 people. That includes people that are working on Culdesac Tempe. We also have some other exciting things that we'll be announcing down the line. And this is our first project. It's on 17 acres. We just completed construction of the first phase. You see the second phase, including that pool, is underway, and there's more phases after that. And that's what we work on.
In terms of your previous experience with Opendoor, how has it been similar and how has it been different in terms of the actual management and organization and growth?
Yeah, well, it was interesting when we started Opendoor. Average transaction size at the time was like, average house price was below $250, and now it's much higher. But we said, it's going to be this. It's not like other startups that have millions or billions of users and lots of transactions. It's a very small number. Building housing development is even slower, so I'm now nostalgic for the days of things moving as fast as they did at Opendoor. This business takes a lot longer to get something off the ground when you do ground up development. It takes years. Also, you have surprises like COVID and a massive supply chain crunch. But a lot of the lessons in terms of listening to what customers want, and there's chances to build things better using modern methods, modern technologies. And in that sense, there's a lot of analogs. And the big insights that gave full conviction that this would work Opendoor, I think, has the best data in real estate. And just seeing so clearly how much demand there is for walkable neighborhoods, and also the qualitative observations from talking to so many customers and hearing what they want. And they don't always ask for it by name. They don't always say, I want to live in a walkable neighborhood, but they say they want to live near a coffee shop or something they cute a lot, or somewhere where they know their neighbors, and it's thoughtful architecture. And those things do really well. That's what we're building.
So yeah, I actually wanted to ask about the definition of walkable neighborhood. So is there some, I'm going to do the cardinal sin of interviewing here, and it's just asking two questions at once, but is there some radius, let's say a half mile or a mile, within which people consider it walkable? And the second part of that, which is tied directly, is what in your mind's eye is required for say, hey, we have a walkable village or a walkable community. And yeah, that's walkable and we have some courtyards and it's, it's lovely. But like to me, people need to be able to walk, like I think about London. Like I visited London with, in this little place called Chiswick, and we were 100 yards off the high street. M&S was right down there. Every night we'd go there and walk and grab. It was, it was just
great, wasn't it?
It was
Yeah.
amazing. It was like, I knew in that moment, so I'm as big a fan of this as you can imagine. I knew in that moment, that is my future. It feels right. But I think for a lot of Americans, they need to be convinced.
Right.
Like most people aren't, like Pete's gonna walk a mile and a half someplace or bike or, and that's no big deal. I think for most people, they need a certain number of things within a half mile.
A school would be one
They need
of
a
the parents,
school.
I don't know if they're gonna drive.
Yeah, a grocery store is a absolute requirement. A library would be pretty nice, like a park. Again, I'm just spitballing this off the top of my head. Like, what do you think? Like, you're the expert at this. Like, what's an absolute requirement within a half mile or a mile?
It's interesting because walkable tends to be the catchphrase that gets used, but it's actually about what you have here and nearby, and also how far you can get. So, for example, the evolution from regular bikes to electric bikes, it makes you able to travel much farther, and it has a huge effect. So, going back to geometry again, if you can go 5 times as far, pi r squared, it's actually 25 times as much area in your travel distance. And so that's a big reason why, and that's why the modern transportation technologies are so important. With electric bikes and ride sharing, you can actually get really far, and sometimes you can actually just go to the exact same places, and that lets you build something different, right? So walkable, or there's other terms you could use like bikeable. We debate this a lot. The stat that I always say is like the majority of the U.S. wants to live in a walkable neighborhood. Only 8% does. That's using a walk score of 70, which is an arbitrary definition, and that's a pretty generous definition for what's walkable. What you really want is something that has lots of amenities and you can get to many more nearby. Ultimately, we want to build an entire city because you can do even more interesting things with transportation, and you can get the cost down even more because the better the area already is, the easier it is to do something like this, but the more expensive the land is. We create a lot of value for those nearby, and walkable neighborhoods are the best, right? We're now the amenity for the places around us. Part of the reason that the neighbors love it. But if we're building even more walkable neighborhoods around us, that could push housing costs even lower. Did that answer your questions?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks. Very good.
Yeah, I have another, kind of going back to the building of a walkable community and how this can be replicatable. Like in my own advocating in my local town, often it was the transportation infrastructure that we're trying to advocate for, and it's an uphill battle to get local city councils, state representatives to allocate money. It was easy to, we want to add an extra lane.
Oh yeah, if you need,
Here's $50 million.
We're doing an $800 million freeway expansion project in Phoenix. You're like, give 1% of that to bike lanes or something.
No problem. Yeah. So one of the headlines honestly is transportation infrastructure, but I'm also being in the real estate business. A lot of the finance business that allows you to develop homes, like from the 1950s on, was you get FHA loan for a single family house to sell to people. So I just want to ask you about that. The financing market, which you dealt with a lot too, is set up for suburban houses,
Cities are subsidizing it. It's raising the cost. It's raising the cost of all city services, and then taxpayers pay that indirectly. And then we're subsidizing it even further. If you buy an electric bike, your subsidy is $0. If you buy an electric car, your subsidy is $7,500, and you can buy 7 electric XPs for $750. And that would be a much better thing to subsidize. But we can't change everything, right? Instead, we're building this to prove that it works and to catalyze this becoming how neighborhoods are built in the U.S.
You have some belief. You have a story is powerful. I know we in our town we tell stories about the next town over. Look at their bike lane, their bike network, and then they can attach that story and say, okay, we'll spend $5 million on that.
Yeah.
So I get that.
So in terms of financing, one of the biggest things is like, can this get entitled, right? And so proving that can work lowers the risk and makes things more financeable. Also, people are looking at what rents look like and proving that there's a lot of demand for this really helps with financing. And one of the dynamics in commercial real estate financing right now is like office has been so challenged that some of the same folks that lend to multifamily are lending to office, and so they've got big problems elsewhere in their portfolio. So that's one of the reasons why, like now, as in like in the last year and the upcoming year, there's been a big shift to more like single family home construction. But long term, hopefully that will rebalance.
There's one other finance that I want to touch on too. Is there's a podcast called Strong Town, which I'm a fan of.
Oh yeah, they've been here.
Give them a shout out.
Yeah, they're. Yeah.
In any case, they talk a lot about like cities finances and how detrimental suburban neighborhoods are.
Oh, yeah.
And that, like a single family house, for example, my town pays $1,200 a year in taxes, and yet you have a big asphalt road in front of you, you got plumbing, you got sewer. So that seems to be another. Even if you don't like walkable neighborhoods, like having your local city finances be much more lucrative, because a lot of cities are running out of money, especially if they're not growing.
Exactly.
Time to make roads. So I think that's another angle that I'm curious if that was a plus for talking to the to the local city councils.
Oh yeah, as there's more budget challenges in cities, this is going to be something that they wish that they did, and so much of the city's budgets go towards that. It makes everything more expensive, it makes the police more expensive, their fire more expensive, and I think that again, some of it is like raising the awareness of the math, and it'll be great for cities in a good way.
Yeah, speaking of awareness and financing, like Cul-de-Sac itself, there's two aspects to it in my view. There's physical reality, like it's a beautiful neighborhood, and then there's the perception of it, and its success partly depends on the perception, and that's why there's a marketing department, but that's also why I'm here personally, and why like these friends that care about better cities are here. Is like the more people know about this neighborhood, and the more people are going to want to move here, and that's going to make its success that much bigger. So this is like the start or a seed of like American better cities that could spread everywhere. If Culdesac is a massive success and all the apartments fill up, and it's like everybody loves living here, it's going to get caught in a whole bunch really fast. Whereas if people don't hear about it enough, they don't fill up as fast, people are like, I don't know, that's a little risky, and they're not going to develop communities. So like basically we are in control to a certain extent of how much this happens elsewhere in the country. So that's why we're doing this podcast partly. Like it's interesting, but it's also a form of activism. So I'm hoping people that listen will kind of speak up and try to make this stuff happen elsewhere, and also come look for apartments here if they're in the market for this type of living.
If you have places with parking spaces, first find out some of your residents might already be car-free. I went to typical mid-rise multifamily project in Texas and asked the property manager. They said 10% is already car-free that they know of, and it's growing. Also, let your tenants charge parking. Lower your base rent, raise your parking fee. That will give some incentive, and you'll discover that lots of people actually will care about that. Let your residents replace parking with other things. Cars, we use it for car storage. If you want to store your car on the city street, we subsidize that, but we should let people make a garden, let people put a picnic bench, let people put a giant chessboard, and that will actually make people happier. It will increase your property values, and so this is not just something that has to be built ground up. It can also be done by changing the existing built environment.
Yeah, everybody has too many parking spaces. There's only a couple times in my whole life of living in the U.S. or Canada that I've ever seen a parking lot totally full. So, can already start reducing those and doing stuff with that land.
Where are some of the cities within the U.S. where you think templates like these are most likely to form? And conversely, are there any areas that are not good candidates?
So the more walkable an area already is, the easier it is to build new walkable neighborhoods. And a lot of the areas that are the most walkable, there's other objections to housing, right? Which is why we started the company based in San Francisco, and we were pretty deliberate around, we wanted to go to a place that welcomes growth, where we think that we could get the entitlements passed. So it's unfortunate how much that happens, but the closer something is to already being sorry about touching the table. The closer something already is to walkable, the easier it is. And as these tailwinds continue to run, it will only get easier. And also, I think that we'll see many more developments that are built greenfield at the edges of cities, or even new cities. The U.S. forgot how to build new cities. Like one of the only ones in the last 50 or 75 years is the villages. And we used to build lots of new cities. And I think that we can restart that here, and it'll be exciting. It's just so hard to cold start it in a world where things are car dependent. But let's actually start with that walkable piece. It'll be easier.
I would love to hear from Mr. 1500 Days if you have any questions. You're the only guy who hasn't asked a question yet.
No, it's all good. I read some crazy statistic a year or two ago about the amount of space in Los Angeles devoted to auto parking. Has anyone else read this or can anyone else
Oh yeah.
speak to this? Because it's
It's every city. It's absurd.
But it's, do you remember what the exact number was or approximately?
No, but like in Phoenix, one estimate is that for every car, there's 8 parking spaces.
Yeah, it's crazy. You think of what else can be done with that.
And that LA number, I remember hearing it's about 30% of the city's land area is covered by asphalt, it's like about a third. And I don't know how much of that is parking versus roads, but it's certainly crazy, especially there because the land is really, really expensive and valuable. So imagine you could turn each parking space into like $300,000 of housing, not because of the square foot price of housing there, if people would just be willing to like have less parking lots.
Yeah, so we're actually solving 2 problems. We're creating cheaper housing because we're repurposing a stupid spot that's probably unoccupied most of the time and putting it to a better use as housing. And then we're also increasing happiness because we're getting people out of their cars and getting them to walk. It's no brainer.
Yeah, happiness. It's something reduced. Walkable neighborhoods will help with the loneliness epidemic, which a lot of it's caused by cars and sprawl. It's a lot better for health. It's also a lot better for wealth. People are more productive. Cities are these great connectors.
Amazing.
So Pete, you've been down here for a couple of months. Can you talk about why you're here and the experience and growth?
Yeah, it's coming up on 3 months actually, like, cause it came at the beginning of December, now it's the end of February. And so my story was I became like an internet fanboy of Cul de Sac's work. And people were like, hey, you like car-free living and bikes? Like, have you ever heard of this Cul de Sac thing? So I started reading their articles and following them online. And then Cul de Sac would occasionally give me like a little heart when I would, share their work. I was like, everybody look at this neighborhood. And then we gradually became more.
Started doing phone calls.
Yeah, we became more internet friends. And then at some point I had the courage to actually get in touch with Brian and his team and say, hey, I want to come and visit in person. So I came like in March of 2023. To see it more in person, and we had like a meetup of blog readers here, and I really liked it. And then I went back to Colorado, and then I was just thinking like, I'm getting a little older, I should try being a snowbird sometime. So then later, I messaged Ryan again and asked if like I could come get a special 4-month arrangement, because with my parenting situation, I didn't want to just move away from Colorado, and they were like, sure, come on now. So that's how this happened, and I've just been experiencing it like a regular resident. And I've never lived in Phoenix before, so I'm learning how everything works, like how to get everywhere by bike. And for me, it's been pretty easy. Phoenix is not a very bike-friendly city compared to other cities, but it's still good enough. Like if you know how to ride a bike, you can get anywhere here by bicycle. It's just not like super rainbows and, unicorns, like protected, flower-lined bike paths like you have some other places. Like you have to use the bike lanes on existing roads, or you have to cut through some parking lots occasionally or whatever. So it's been good for me though.
Cool. And then Ryan, it's cool how you started liking your stuff. The requirement would show up. So Ryan, were you controlling the social media at the time that you do?
I don't think so.
Someone else did?
I know we also have some other employees that work on it. I definitely have liked your stuff. So yeah. Yeah, like I said, the first of y'all was JD and Get Rich Slowly.
JD Roth is behind the camera. just
Yeah,
in case
behind the
people are,
camera.
I don't know if you're trying to hide back there.
Yeah.
No.
But yeah, thinking of this, and especially where it's not just about saving, it's also about spending better and like optimizing for happiness and a happiness research, and that's like a lot of the mentality that I got from y'all.
So on top of that, a theme that we run into a lot, especially on our shift, is community. I've been with a couple of these guys, and it's awesome. Like we can meet up for dinner, or if there's a lot of people around free time. So can you talk about the role of community for Culdesac, what it is right now, and then where you see it maybe in a year or two?
Yeah, and sometimes when people think about cul-de-sac and hearing car-free, it's like it's the subtraction of something. It's not at all about that. We didn't just take a normal design and law off the parking the same. Instead, we re-envisioned what a neighborhood could look like from the beginning, and we focus on community, mobility, and open space as the three things that make this great. And community is interesting. We think of ourselves sort of like a campus where one of our slogans is nobody wants to invite their landlord to the group chat. So we do throw some events. We throw our marquee events is Little Choya every Thursday. It's a night market with different themes. It was K-pop and had 40 minutes of spontaneous dancing on Thursday. We also do farmers markets and a few others, but mostly it's a place where we want to really enable the residents. And part of that is in the design and the way that the spaces are, and just the nature of not having cars means that they form friendships, and it's an emergent community. A lot of these like new city, new neighborhood things have failed because of hubris and thinking that people knew the best top-down design. And one of our values is that this is an emergent neighborhood, and really learning from those residents and building for them. And so, phase one has really only gotten to critical mass with over 100 people like in the last few months. And it's, as you've seen, it's that flywheel of more friendships, etc. And that's really coming together. And that's something that people really value here. It shows up in our data.
Yeah, one thing actually I wanted to add on, because as a resident, I wanted to see what the social scene would be like here. And it's interesting because most people move to an apartment complex and they bring their apartment habits, which is being reclusive. And so Culdesac is trying to train that out of the residents. And like, no, you can be friends. You can say hi to your neighbors. So they have like cornhole game out there and a ping pong table in the plaza and all this stuff. And then for now, they're doing these, it's a little bit like a campus or a retirement home where they're seeding with these events that are organized by the Culdesac team. And that really helped actually, because if you just threw the residents in and said, oh, make friends guys, then it's not gonna happen very quickly. So I think it's really accelerating it. And another thing, to be candid, is like this team that Ryan handles, or like hired, it's like a bunch of really fun people, like really personable, super nice people that you actually want as your real life friends, and they all work here, they're at the picnic tables, they come to the events as well as helping to organize them. And that's kind of neat. It's like having a ringer team. So like here's the cool people, and they're like, everyone's friends on the team, and they're friends with residents. So like that makes it easier for the residents to meet each other. Yeah. And then the way I feel it's gonna happen is that more people come, then the flywheel of socialization is happening, and then you guys won't have to work so hard to create stuff because it'll just be happening organically. And I like that, but I'm glad that you have the team for now, and I'm glad that you're planning the events, because like it really helps at this stage.
Yeah, it brings in the community nearby, makes everybody feel super welcome. And also for us, it helps expose more people to seeing what this is like. And then more people are like, oh, maybe I want to live this way.
Yeah, so good job. And I know it's super hard because you're like, doing something that hasn't really been done before. So everybody has to crank for now. And I'm glad that they're doing it.
Lots of challenges. And thanks for being here. It's been awesome having you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. That seemed like an ending to it. I was curious, how do you bring the community in? So when you were talking about that K-pop spontaneous dancing, Pete said it was a mob scene. There were just that's not easy to do, right? Like that.
It's not like that every Thursday. You have different themes. That one worked. People loved it.
52 weeks a year.
So happy. Yeah. Might do another one now.
But for real, like, how do you advertise? Like, how did you let the community know about each other?
So some of it's traditions, and we started that. It used to be at the other end of the construction site. We wanted to bring energy to the site, get people in the area hearing more about Culdesac. It was this pop-up with, they were like rugs and storage containers, and then we started doing it every week, and the traditions just kept building. We learned more about what worked, what created a great environment, what would draw people for the first time, and what would get them to come back. And it starts to build a reputation of its own. And we're always iterating and learning. And like I empower my team to do that. And I say, hey, look, it's important to try new things as long as you learn from them. And you might discover some accidentally great things, and you can shift away from the things that didn't work. So K-pop does work apparently.
Yeah, I was, as a resident here, I was like, where did you get like hundreds of attractive Korean people who are all good dancers to just spontaneously materialize and party like for the whole night? It's like, they must Live nearby, it's kind of magic.
Yeah, there's been other fun ones as well. Vintage clothes, who knew that they were so popular, for example?
Yeah.
But
So I was curious, the iteration and learning. So it sounds like a lot of that is certainly working with the cultural aspects and even bring cornhole, just little things, right? Does it also extend to the physical buildings and infrastructure? So you talked about phase 1 exists. Phase 2, I think you alluded to a pool and then maybe some additional buildings.
we have a full park.
Are phase 3 and beyond set in stone, or is there still room for iteration?
There's still room, and we've learned a lot. You'll see some of those in some of the differences, and we're always learning, and we also apply those to other cities that we're going to.
Anything like 1 or 2 jump out as like particular learnings?
I think that we're going to have some for sale product in the future. That's something that we hear so many people that are interested in that. But there's a lot more, and I'll save some of those for when we reveal our next things.
Okay. Awesome. Hold on, I can close it. All right, I'm not close it because it's your podcast, but yeah. So I guess talking about the future, what does success look like? So 10 years from now, at this particular location, what is success?
So in 10 years, want this place to be thriving, obviously fully built out, and have it be a place that people say this is where the movement to build walkable neighborhoods everywhere started, where it's now copied all over the country. Please copy us. Please come visit. We'll talk more about how to make these neighborhoods, and that there's now more all over the U.S. And we have our own ambitions and a roadmap, but also want to see everyone else build like this, and want cities to enable this. And cities should be thinking about, are you Culdesac ready? Do you have the policies in place to attract developers that are building walkable neighborhoods? And I think that those who are the earliest to that will be happy, and their cities will be better.
I like that. Are you Culdesac ready?
Yeah.
The hashtag, the city plan, put it on their shirts.
Yeah.
You want to?
Actually, where did the name come from?
The name came from, we were thinking about it and threw it out. And wouldn't it be funny to call it Cul-de-sac because it's ironic? And then we realized we liked the name. So when you grew up in a place like Phoenix in the 90s, the 80s or whatever, the word cul-de-sac signifies warmth and family and home, right? Like my high school 4x800 relay team was me and 3 people that lived on the same cul-de-sac together, and it's the one part of the neighborhood without cars. And it's ironic because building neighborhoods with cul-de-sac and have a dendritic street network instead of a grid system actually makes communities disconnected. But you have these little oases in the middle, which is that cul-de-sac, and that's a place without cars. The property values are higher. That's where the neighbors are more likely to know each other. They're usually the fun spot for Halloween. You can have street hockey, spontaneous dance parties. Some of the more entrepreneurial cul-de-sacs will just like walk off the street and put picnic benches. And so we said that everyone should be able to live in a cul-de-sac, and life is better on the cul-de-sac. And that hint of irony is good. It also made the domain name cheaper. And just call it out of favor.
I never knew that story. That's cool.
Yeah.
Thanks
So
for the
comment on
person.
that. We were in the office today and saw books by Jane Jacobs, which I'm a fan of the urbanism movement, new urbanism, and that one point about the cul-de-sac struck me as a creative application of an old concept, which is, the city's been built for thousands and thousands of years, and there's some things that we sort of tried to reinvent with subdivisions that have worked in some respects, but have not worked. But taking the idea of the cul-de-sac in this organic, living kind of place you can't plan everything. The best thing sometimes with a little temporary bench or the wiffle ball game that goes on the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Just leaving space. At best, the neighborhood infrastructure, transportation leaves space for life to happen and the real stuff to happen, which I think is kind of a cool concept for why we live in a place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if my question with that was, is there any, I think it's a challenge building from scratch. Most of the places I like personally are really old. I like the character of the trees, I like the streets, I like the fact that it was built around human beings. I see it as like a big challenge to get some of those little organic touches that really matter to people when they live in a place that you don't even know they're important to you. Like, Brad was talking about living in part of London, and some of those, the smells, and it's the market on the street, and it's the life and the things that happen. So I think you mentioned some of these, but are there any other strategies you have to bring a place that's brand new but make it feel alive and have more culture and life to it.
Yeah, building the place with the right design, and we focus on community, mobility, and open space. We have lots of amenities. We also pay attention to what works, listen to residents, and iterate. We also have lots of micro retail. There's not just bigger places like the restaurant and the bike store, but there's 500 square feet spaces that have things like a Japanese home goods store. We're about to have a plant store. There's a vintage clothing store. There's an esthetician. There's a candle store. And these are small businesses that add to the community. And allowing the community itself to flourish and residents to host their own events. And right in this space, there was a Galentine's event that even sold tickets, and people host lots of things over at the restaurant. So it's not just about the food.
Ryan, I asked before about success, right? So 5-10 years from now. You know, I'm looking out on Culdesac Tempe here, right? So it's 17 approximately contiguous acres. When you're done, you know, you've done all this work here in Tempe with getting certainly, I guess, work with the governments, and you have the light rail here. Like, with expansion, there's a thought, hey, let's do this in many different cities. But is there also a thought, hey, we could just buy another set of acres a couple miles down the road, or even closer? Like, is that ever crossed your mind too? Okay, or is this Cul-de-Sac Tempe, or is it conceivable that it could be augmented in some way?
Yeah, it could be both. It could be building. You know, we plan to build new things in other states and other cities, and also there's other opportunities nearby, and you may be hearing about one of those at some point. So.
I've already heard about that one.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's in a good spot. Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
I think we've
That
done.
was, I mean, obviously kind of a weird way to end. So it's like if anybody has like a
Well, yeah, I just wanted to like wrap it up. So we've already done more than an hour long podcast, which is pretty good for people's attention spans. So I just want to wrap it up by saying thank you, Ryan, because like this is kind of a dream. Like when I write This Morning Mustache, and I try to get people to, you know, be better with their money so that they don't have to work. And then what I hope they do is they go on to do work that's meaningful for them. It's like, you know, you don't just sit around on the couch when you're financially independent. You do something else meaningful that you normally might not have the courage to do. So I want to thank you personally for doing exactly what I want people to do, which is like leverage into something where you're making a difference. Because I know it's not easy. Like you're working super hard even though you don't have to, and it's because you want to make a difference. And so it's like it's awesome. Thank you, and I hope everybody else who has that situation in your life takes that type of chance and does it too.
Thanks, Ryan. Where can people find you?
You can find Culdesac on our website, culdesac.com. You can find us right here in Tempe. Come on Thursdays for a little show. Check out the restaurant, Cocina Chivas. They just won another James Beard Award, and they're on the USA Today top 47 restaurants in the countries. Also, we're on Instagram, X, TikTok, LinkedIn, etc. So please connect. And you've already introduced us to so many great people, including some new residents, and looking forward to more.
Right on.
We'll link up to everything. Thanks again, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Is that what you wanted?
Good.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
good.
It was nice. I like how we're going through operating questions.
Yeah.
I feel it was nice. It's different than the typical Ryan interview
Good.
in some ways. So it's great.
We said the hot sauce thing.
Ask.
Right.
So hello. All right, that was our interview. Sorry, the beginning was a little bit off, but that was an interview recorded here in Tempe with Ryan, the founder, co-founder and CEO of Culdesac. Mr. Money Mustache, that's Chad Carson, that's Brad Barrett, who's at Phi. So hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. See ya.
And it's funny, you literally asked the question about community and culture, and I had that queued up in my head. I was like, that was fun.